information.
And here's one. This young lady lives in North Carolina, practices in North Carolina,
She's only taking the LSI.
and has taken her FS in North Carolina. Yet she wants to take the rest of the exam in Tennessee. And I'm not sure if I remember my North Carolina standards right, whether or not she even meets North Carolina standards. She needs to be taking the exam in North Carolina, not Tennessee. Because she's applying under the 10-year rule in Tennessee.
Yeah.
And she's not licensed.
Yeah.
All she has is the FS, the LSIT. So I can't go with this. You know, like I told Sue, if she was a licensed surveyor and it's in this pile, and we're going to wait till next time to draw the hard line in the sand, I got no problem. But I can't let her take it.
She's not licensed.
No, all she has is the LSIT.
Yeah. No,
I can't.
I'm kind of with you.
I mean, because what she's done circumventing North Carolina in order to get a license in Tennessee, and then go over there and get a license over there, where she works.
Yeah.
Now I guess they're going to have to say that.
I have a question. The lady came in and turned the unit on. We're not discussing business. I'm having ratchet going right now.
That thing's not on for you.
Yeah.
Well, it would have been certainly very polite for her to tell us that she turned it off, so we could have brought business to order. Why don't you go turn it out, because we don't have it on while we're doing applications.
Can I go turn it on?
Turn it on when we do the application. Not usually.
They just go to it, or just do the application, right? Things we're doing more stuff. Just didn't know.
We're not doing any business. We're just going to go applications. That doesn't need to be recorded. What else stuff we need to talk about?
How long are we gonna hear this?
4:30.
Put a big dent in it?
Yeah.
What did your wife enjoy?
She certainly did. Had a wonderful time. Really did. Good man. Okay, it is 9:23 a.m. The board has been reviewing applications for some time. I have just been appraised that our audio-visual has now been turned on, unbeknownst to the chairman. So we will call our business to order. We are going to continue to review applications, and we'll be discussing those until we get those complete. And when the applications are complete, we will then begin the business of the day.
Sounds good.
Bless you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to go up and work on our rules, and I will be called when we get to
Okay.
this part.
Okay, thank you.
Certainly, if you have a question about an application.
We have about 10 applications remaining, which should take us about, probably to about 10 o'clock. So
Okay.
if you come down a little bit shortly after 10, we should be ready to conduct business.
Just want to make sure constructively doing the time.
I hate that. When a road curves, yeah, and they put in little cords. I hate that.
I do too.
Because, I mean, that could have been one call.
Absolutely. Where'd that come
They.
from? Classmate. Married. Frostland or Frostland, what they call it. And, been working on our reunion together. Thanks to me. Very often. Her husband used to own a car dealership. That's the way. Y'all would call it after. But I don't like that. I agree. Who was the supervisor on that one? I overseen it.
Phillips. John Phillips.
Anything on the other?
No, the other one didn't have a road coming with it. The other one just,
Okay.
that's a straight road basically. But they did break it pretty consistent.
Maybe they're not, into doing non-tangent curves, it's so noted as that. But a lot of these kind of roads, they never were built to specifications,
No.
just went out there, and what's there is there, you just have to use what's there.
Had some storms down your way last night. I was watching on the weather.
What's the weather? What did I already find right here? Did I hear last night?
Didn't see none. Did the night before.
I woke up at 7 o'clock. And played, and I turned on the TV, and I watched the Olympics for a little while. Watched Michael Phelps win his gold.
Oh, I love the land.
The only part I like it is, I like the swim. That little girl that did that, that little black girl,
You was something, wasn't
she
you?
was.
Yeah, she was something.
You up? Here's somebody that's saying,
Where?
it's down the road.
That's why I give it to you. That's why I gave it to you.
Philip Queen's her name.
Haven't really worked over in a long time, but I'm not. Still paying the fees.
Well, I agree with you on that. Next, I get
You're getting
close to whatever.
That's all one for the man, brother, so. Okay, so now Well, we've agreed to review these because they're here. Right here, Dave. This is an NCWS record. If you get a license survey, you can pay a fee to NCWS. They will keep this record. And every time you get licensed somewhere else, or you had more college, or anything you do in your professional career, they will add that to you. For example, it's like right here, the question that we're asking. Years after PS registration. Right. You see. So, but it says that he has a total. See it, but I mean, it tells you it's prior to FS, prior to PS, prior to, see here. It gives you everything in one handy dandy spot. It's got it right there. And then you can look through here and it'll have reference forms. It'll also have 31, 31 forms. Transcripts or whatever's appropriate to this individual. This particular record has everything. So we basically accept this record primarily. This record is for out-of-state individuals. Okay, but it tells you everything that you need to know very quickly, and it has way more paperwork than we require for our application. So it's really good when you see it.
But when it tells us this, it tells me right here, that's why. He's got 6 years, but he doesn't have, I mean, he's got registration, but he doesn't have 10 years now.
We've agreed to flow these through this time, and then we're going to do the policy when Rob comes back, and then that's it.
Yeah.
So that's why we're doing these right now. I just wanted to show you this NCWS record.
Yeah, because I haven't
Because
seen
you may
one.
not have seen one
I have.
or very many of them, but it's really very handy.
Yeah, and I agree.
And it helps. I mean, it goes and tells you, when they took and where and everything. And the ones with the degree, they're even better. The records are, because they've got everything, of course, highlighted, identified, the colleges, everything.
And all, of course, they took all, just 1, 2, and 3 highlighted and all that.
Well, basically, they have the courses listed. They don't have much one, 2, 3.
Oh, is that right?
But it's easy for you to write to and look.
Yeah, oh, okay, yeah.
It's much easier to handle.
Okay.
That will bring something that they're going to make for the next letter, probably will correct the thing, so. And that's fine, I no problem with that, he just wanted to put something together. You don't want to hex, do you?
Travels around.
license down. He's accumulating right now. Which, like I say, we would have required us to have it next time. That was pretty straightforward. I'll give you some cigarette. 7. That was a big number. Does not have 4-year degree.
I could see.
Well, he's under 10 years.
That's what I didn't see.
Again, we're letting him go today. We have a good moan today. It's definitely his record, okay? Here, see, that would mark under what we're looking at policy-wise.
Yeah.
Since we have a good moan today, we want to lock. I do. I do. But I'll be twice as ugly the next time.
Should I know him at the August 2nd?
Well, he said he didn't want us to do anything just yet, so
Oh.
we're going to see what he says when he comes back. No. What, they're circumventing the system in the state.
Get licensed, they can get licensed here and somewhere
Yep.
else.
Yeah.
They want to do their own study. Have they taken test?
Yeah. But if they're licensed out of state, you only have to take like the Americans.
That's why we get to
That's why we got it. We just don't have any
But I
choice.
just hate, people always do stuff.
Well, that's fine. No, that's fine. We'd like to say
It
that.
happens in this national county.
Well, it's going to take a lot of problems this time. But when we put the hammer down, it's just going to be what it is. But we'll be able to justify it.
I didn't know you could do that. Get licensed there. One of those guys in Texas, I want to see if I can get licensed in Tennessee.
Sometimes companies have projects that they come in. You know, the Forest Service puts out a lot of projects, and there are people who bid them who come in here and do them. They might be 10,000 acres or something, but they need a license. They don't want to work with the Tennessee Surveyors, so they just go try to get their license when the project's coming in. For example, like you may have actually done the project last month, but your start date is not until like January. So you go ahead and get your application in real quick, come take the test. If you pass it, then you're good. If you don't, then you got to negotiate with Tennessee Surveyor. But that's not uncommon at all. Interesting thing. I don't know him. I don't think Turlington. Turlington. Larry Turlington. Okay, he's in North Carolina. That's okay. His license, let's see.
Pentagon, you had surveyors in the Pentagon. I was in the Army, I wasn't
Yeah.
in the Pentagon.
Yeah, they got them all over the place. It's hard to say. I don't know, but I knew I was aware that they had some up there.
Oh, what's that?
I never heard of that one before. Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College. See, it's just like when I started getting my license, I got my Tennessee license. I was 21 years old. I got my Kentucky license 6 months later. And then I applied for Virginia. And the executive director just flat out told me, he said, I can't put this on record, but he said, you're too young. We can't. Well, he said, you just can't have, you just don't have enough experience. And I already had 2 licenses. And I've been working since I was 16, so, but anyway, because rules are different then. So, he told me, he said, if you will go to North Carolina, that's the only reason I took the test. He said, you get your license, but you cannot deny you because we reciprocate. So, I went to North Carolina, got my license. I called him back up. I don't have to take that. So by the time I was 23, I had full surveys. And like I say, that was because I really, the one I really wanted was Tennessee, Virginia. That's where I really wanted because it was right in the line. But I got Kentucky and North Carolina to accommodate all that. And then I had a guy that had worked for us in Georgia, so I got my Georgia license in 2000. It's been 21 years since I took the test. It was tough. It was tough. But I passed it, so I guess they gave me the license. I don't know if I passed it or not, but they did give me the license. I think we only denied one of them. I mean, I don't understand her outpost.
Come out, maybe she's gonna
Say, but she's not a resident.
what, but she'll probably write you back and tell you she's moving here. Is the case? What?
Y'all want her too late. They are.
I just want to take that down and fall into the other bed so
Yeah, that's it. 2 real things I ain't supposed to know until I have them. They both broke on me.
I know.
Got your TV to watch. Wow. I come right on. I got 68%. Where'd you go?
Mine's finished back.
Really? Must have give Gale and one don't have no power. That wasn't nice, was it?
All electrified. Oh, this is, here's our wheat.
took it in Tennessee years ago, and he's reapplying.
Okay, that's what I was.
Yeah, he took, never passed it.
And he got his doctor's license in, what is it, North Carolina? North Georgia.
No.
Now, I noticed here.
He's in the wrong form. I don't know why he's in that form with it.
Well, I wondered about that too. I said, do I?
He sent the whole application and the form in.
Yeah, this is okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, on this one, you sign yellow.
This right here. This is
Yeah.
what I was.
Yeah, on that one, you can just ignore that.
Okay, well, I thought, wait a minute. This
Yeah.
is June of this year. I said, well, this is okay. All right.
He took it years and years ago.
Now, has he taken, well, he took, what, the state specific
He
years
took-
ago here?
I think he took, I don't remember. He took it and never did pass it, so.
But
Yeah,
then-
he just took the state specific here.
That's
And,
all.
okay, yeah, never passed it,
Okay,
so.
but he passed everything in Georgia, that's license.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's what I
And then he's
saw.
licensed here too, so.
Yeah,
But
okay,
he took the national card here.
yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's one thing that needs to have yes is looking at is with the new CBT or FSC.
So much for that one. Let's see, is that one done? I think that one's on.
If you have been on vacation in California, you can go slide into that.
It is.
So we're done with those?
If you live in
I hope so.
Tennessee specifically, I mean, you're not obligated to take it there because it's a national examination.
Can I carry this for you?
We're gonna take about a 10-minute recess.
I hope so.
So Donna, if you wanna turn the TV off officially, you can do that.
Of our rulemaking in this board, don't we?
All right, it's now 10 minutes after 10 on Friday, August 3rd. We'll reconvene our meeting. Our board attorney, Mr. Herndon, has returned, and he is going to help instruct us on the creation of a possible policy to help us in future review of our applications.
You're referring to the 10 years. Well, I'm going to ask the board for them to agree on an interpretation of what this law means and how to consistently apply it so we can craft a policy that we can use for everybody. So I'd just like to hear the board's discussion on how they interpret that law. Chairman, if you want to read the actual text of the law into the record,
Okay.
so the licensees will know what we're talking about. 6218, last few words.
Okay, 6218-109, 2C says, any person who submits evidence to the board that such person has practiced surveying for not less than 10 years shall be exempted from the provisions of subdivision B1, which subdivision B1 says, effective July 1, 2003, and except as provided in subdivision B2, no person shall be eligible for registration as a professional land surveyor unless such person satisfies all requirements in any one of the following three categories, which are categories A, B, and C.
Which requires some form of degree
Yes.
examination.
And that actually should be small b.
Now let me point out that satisfactory to the board evidence that the person has practiced surveying. So let's refer to TCA 6218-102, chapter definitions, paragraph 3. Before that, 6218-101, paragraph B. It's unlawful for any person to practice or offer to practice land surveying in the state unless that person has been duly registered or exempted under this chapter. And then go down to the definition of practice. And this is a definition that we're familiar with and having the appropriate knowledge. So both of these relate to our discussion because the word practice surveying appears. I would suggest that the board interpret that as under its meaning under 101 and 102.
Do any of the members have any disagreement or further discussion about the way that we want to define this particular section based on what our attorney has indicated?
No, I don't. I think that what has been stated is sufficient to say that the practice of land surveying is that, and that is by a licensed practitioner.
You must be licensed in order
Must be licensed to practice. Otherwise, it's not considered practice.
In this paragraph C, this person applying under practicing 10 years must have been evidence satisfactory to the board. That person is practice surveying. So the task under this framework, the task of the board is to interpret this statute and how it would be applied to an application or an applicant. What that applicant would need to have in their application in order for the board to consider issuing a license under this statute. So now we need professional opinions from board members on how they feel that should be utilized. Having gone through the definition of practice and knowing what the framework and parameters are.
Well, I do not feel like that any individual that is a resident of the state of Tennessee that is unlicensed should have the ability to apply for licensure under this particular section based on the fact that it uses the word practice, which ties directly to licensure. Now, if an individual is licensed in another state, then I think the individual, and the individual does not qualify under one of the three categories by degree, then I think it would be incumbent on the board to review that application of an out-of-state licensee if that licensee has 10 or more years of practice as a land surveyor and does not have any violations or anything of that nature within the state that they practice in. I think that we would be able to use that provision to review their application.
I think we should probably break this policy into number one. No person who doesn't have a valid Tennessee surveyor's license may practice surveying. So don't even bother, right?
Right.
Let me ask you this. Like, y'all have a crew, people have these crews. They let these guys go out and, do the field work, but they're not licensed.
No.
So then they get there, we change this road to practice. You have to practice, you have to have a license.
Right.
Well,
It eliminates,
everybody gonna get rid of their field crew? No.
no, but it eliminates an individual in the field crew having the ability to apply for licensure specifically under the 10-year rule. They would have to conform to category A, B, or C in the state of Tennessee in order to be able to be approved by the board to sit for the examination. And I think that this portion of the rule has actually done what we are trying to create a policy for, but I think that the board has misinterpreted how we should have understood that. And I think that's what we're trying to do, is clear up that interpretation. Because the intent, as Galen spoke yesterday, about the committee, when the BS degree came on board, their intent was to have an agreed individual as a licensee. And that gets us back to that intent.
And the apprentice type program went away, was supposed to have gone away after 6 years, because that's what the initial requirement was, is to have 6 years of experience in responsible charge to be able to take the exam. Or if you had a degree, I forgot, they gave a good bit of credit if you had a degree. But when you got a degree in surveying and surveying and mapping, then you said, all right, the requirement is you got to have a DS degree. Then the apprentice type program was scheduled after 6 years to dissolve and be gone. And how it got extended for another 4 years. And I thought, well, all right, it's extended for another 4 years, but it has gone on and on. Perpetual. It should have terminated, even if they had wanted it to go 10 years. At 10 years, it should have ended. But the board has interpreted that to have been 10 years experience, and that's not the intent, in my opinion. What the committee was asked to do, we asked to have a 4-year degree and have that put into law.
Well, because if you'll note, that law went in, I believe, in 97. From 97 to 03 was that 6-year window, which basically allowed the people that were in that window to qualify for examination. And as Donna said yesterday, you know, we had a tremendous rush near this July date here of applications and examinees. I mean, there were hundreds of them that came in at that particular time. Right. Yeah, they just slammed the board at that particular time. So I think that the board, including this board, has misinterpreted that, and I think it's incumbent upon us to, with your direction, to create a policy so that we manage that properly and consistently in the future.
Not be arbitrary. Well, I think number one is if you don't have a valid Tennessee license, you can't meet the requirements for this statute. Number two, I think in the interest of simplicity, somebody that has practiced for 10 years under a legitimate exemption, meaning when we were talking about federal work, where you can legally do surveying without, in the state without having to have a licensed TBA Corps of Engineers, they can apply, but it's still subject to whether or not, like Mr. Northcutt said, what you've been doing qualifies as a survey.
Yeah.
They can apply though.
Right. And you mentioned that, and so we can't practice, but I was going to back and just mentioned the government bodies that do have surveyors on their staff, but they are not licensed in the state of Tennessee by the definition of surveyor.
Let's see. I'm going to say any person who's practiced land surveying under a legitimate exemption, meaning the federal agency or the military or something like that, may apply. But we need to say something about you have to, your resume has to have sufficient experience satisfactory to the board, but you can apply. No guarantee you'll get it.
Yes.
Can they apply as long as what would you call it? I guess it'd be a resume. Duties and activities. How would you professionally term, as long as they're surveying responsibilities or activities?
just
Yeah,
experience. Experience or background conforms to the criteria that's set forth by the board.
Okay. Any person who's practiced land surveying in a legitimate exemption may apply so long as the applicant's experience and background is satisfactory to the board. Now we get into the tougher ones. Those are the meatballs. Those are the easy ones. The ones that can't ever under any circumstance, and now the some that can, but there's no guarantee as long as you have a legitimate exemption. So now, Mr. Chairman, what's your scenario for a third example?
Okay, so what you said, we've talked about the in-state and then the in-state exempt. Now we need to talk about the out-of-state. I think what we had discussed earlier was that an out-of-state licensee needs to have their license. If they do not have a degree, they cannot qualify under our degree requirement, then they would have to have their license for a minimum of 10 years. And they would be able to submit application to the board for the board's discretionary review to determine whether or not they're able to sit for the examination.
Right, because our statute next under reciprocity is the one that says your license has to be substantially identical to our requirements. So in this case, it's somebody that grandfathered in another state, received their license in another state, doesn't have a degree, comes here, we'll review that. They have a license, but they didn't get it through an exam, so they don't qualify under reciprocity. Is that correct?
No, they would have a license, and more than likely, just like the ones we just reviewed, they would have a license by examination. But they would have qualified to sit for the examination in their state by those state standards, and they would have been deficient by our mind because they did not have a BS degree of some form to qualify them for A, B, or C. So the 10-year rule then would be a criteria that they could be judged on by the board along with their experience. For example, if an individual received their license in the year 2000 in any state, and they applied next year to take our examination, theoretically they would have had 12 or 13 years of experience, and they would provide that to us. So they would have met another state's criteria, and they would have had experience, which I feel like that's the spirit of that section. It's more for the person that is already licensed, which means they have to be basically have to be licensed somewhere else in order to request the board to review their application for licensure in Tennessee. I said that right. Because I think we shouldn't deny an individual that is out of state the ability to take our examination with that in our rules because they didn't have a BS degree. If that was not in our rules, then I think that we would be obligated to deny that.
Any person who has obtained a license in another jurisdiction by means that do not meet minimum Tennessee requirements and has at least 10 years experience may apply.
They apply.
So
So I guess that's the guy you're talking about that was grandfathered in. He was an engineer in Arizona, and he applies here. He's had 10 years experience. He's a licensed surveyor in Arizona. He has 10 years experience. After he was licensed out there, he may apply here.
Or if his degree is not a degree like we would normally.
Right. Whether it's degree or not.
He had a bachelor's in mathematics, and he somehow, if he got his license in Arizona and came here, 10 years experience, we could look at it. Doesn't quite mean reciprocity. Reciprocity could be immediate,
Yes,
as opposed to waiting 10 years. So
yes, the
it's not an
board,
easier way in.
yeah, the board could receive a request from John or Jane Q. Public for reciprocity. And we could, based on our review of that individual,
What is
virtually give them
reciprocity?
the license.
What does the reciprocity say? Is it 50's degree?
They have to have a degree. They have to have license requirements substantially similar to ours, at least meet our minimum standards, meaning in that state, they got the right degree, they took the exam. They did everything we would make them.
Right.
And if they have and can prove it to you, then we'll let them have a license here.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, the 10 years case, they didn't meet our minimum requirements to get their license, but they've been working for 10 years. So we would look at it. So it's really no easier than reciprocity because you gotta wait 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not a way of going around reciprocity. I think that's a more equitable application of the law. So you don't have a license, don't bother. If you worked on a legitimate exemption and don't have a license with cabs or the Army or something, you can apply.
You can apply whether it,
Approved or not.
whether we approve it or not.
And number 3 is if you have a license under conditions that normally we wouldn't consider for reciprocity, but in practice for 10 years, you can apply.
Yeah.
That might cover about every situation. What do you think, Sue? What's the board think of these 3 points for a policy?
I think that pretty well covers what I think should have been covered as far as requirements for licensure.
Is that a logical application?
I think so. I think
that's the intent.
Yeah.
We're trying to go. The other thing I'd like to discuss policy-wise, Rob, is, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, going through the applications, is that the 2-year progressive experience that is tied directly to the 3 categories, that 2-year progressive experience be after the FS exam is passed and the individual becomes an LSIT. And so that it's not intertwined with a brief period after that and a time period before. I feel like that if we're not careful, we're shortchanging some people getting a license possibly too quick if they have the ability to take the examination.
You know, this is identical almost to what engineers are talking about, when they can start applying these. So I think we might want to talk about that. That issue seems to come up in the other technical trades too.
Now,
When you start counting their experience.
And what this does potentially is it makes the licensing process a 2-step process now, as opposed to it's basically going to eliminate folks coming in and taking all 3 parts for the most part. In other words, an individual would come in, qualify under one of those categories. They would take the FS exam, become an LSIT, get 2 years of experience, and then apply to take the PS and the TS. And I think it would be a more orderly fashion. I think it ensures the profession that the LSIT is getting 2 additional years of progressive experience. Even though I don't like that language, I prefer responsible charge, but I don't know how David feels about that.
Well, I like the responsible charge also, and it might be progressive in responsible charge. Just add that to it. What does it take to add to that?
Policy.
we wanted the wording to be in a position of responsible charge, progressive experience in a position.
Yeah,
of
that would be a law
responsible
change,
Yeah.
which is difficult, or arduous, let's put that way.
There's that no, their applications are no rules.
Because the guy can
We have our
have
categories.
the guy can have progressive experience, like Tim said. He can come in and he can be the truck driver, and then he can drive the stakes, and then he can hold the rod, and then he can set up the tripod, and then he can, set the instrument up.
he has
And
progressed.
he's never done anything as far as being responsible for.
Decipher the thing.
Right.
And that's right. And I just think that when you're in a position of responsible charge, that's the experience we're looking for.
See, and you're right, Rob, the applications are in the rules. What page is that? It's on page 31. It's 0820-1-101.
Applications
102,
and
actually.
examinations. What does it say? You gotta have experience in this one.
1-102. It's on page 31.
It was under the categories.
What's that?
It's under category.
It's in categories, that particular wording is under categories.
A is you gotta have a degree in surveying. B, it has to be some kind of science. 2 years of progressive, that's what they give them there. They got long
Did you find it?
I thought it always said.
I think it's 1-02.
That's what we require, that's in the rules.
Yeah.
Which we can modify that. See, before, Rob, the language, before this came in 97, the language always stated responsible charge. And then since 97, it's been progressive experience.
We can change this into rulemaking. I mean, next, I guess the one after continuing education, because this is chapter 1, I think, general rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
They can make itself we have definitions in here.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the law. This is the law. It's not a rule.
Yeah.
Categories are in the statute. We can't change it. We got to get it changed.
Right. I did notice, Donna, that in 62-18-125, it says that the board shall establish the schedule of fees. And we have the ability to establish fees for exams, licensing, and renewal, which shows up in that chapter 1, and those have been modified. So it looks like to me, if I read this right, and Rob can correct me, that we'll have the ability to actually change those fees once we get this number that we talked about. We're going to look at in October. We'll be able to do that within our own purview.
Yeah.
Which is good. But the real key to it is getting that staggered renewal. Then we can really balance the books.
It's not going to be easy to get any kind of fee increase to the General Assembly. You got to remember they have to approve our rules. And they
Yeah,
can
it says
say
the
no.
department does, yes. It says the department has to approve.
Well, the General Assembly does.
Oh, really?
Only God can make a tree, and only the legislature can make a law. And they have to approve everything we do.
Well,
And they can say no.
they could.
It's that happy marriage of the three branches of government.
Right.
We created an executive branch. The AG interprets it, the judicial, but the legislative branch is the one that approves it. Responsible charge is defined.
It says payment of payment by the applicant of a fee set by the board in accordance with 62-18-125 with the approval of the Commissioner of Commerce and Insurance. It doesn't say anything else about the legislature, I mean, in the law. I'm sure they'll get their finger in the pie.
Rule on responsible charge of service doesn't really define it. It just says that if you have a firm, you have to have somebody in responsible charge of it. I was hoping we had a definition of responsible charge so we could try to get the law changed from progressive to responsible. You don't have a rule that has definitions in it. No. So 3. That doesn't help. Nothing difficult is ever easy. Yogi Berra said. So are we satisfied with our 10-year policy?
I'm okay with it.
What I will do is I will draft it up, and at the next meeting, you can look at the finished product and adopt it.
Okay.
Put it on the website. So we can definitely put it in our newsletter whenever you adopt it.
This, what we'll do is, when he gets it ready, put it on the agenda for October. We'll vote on it, revise it, whatever. And then at that point in time, you can put it on the website, and we'll put it in the winter, spring newsletter. That way it'll show up in 2 different places.
May not fix the problem, but it'll patch it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it'll create issues, but that's fine.
Well, the board has spoken. This is the way we're going to apply this statute. I think it's fair. I think it's not going to allow people that shouldn't have a license to get a license.
I agree.
We're the
That's
gatekeepers
the
here.
intent.
Right.
I don't think anybody would think that statute is in here to allow somebody to subvert the rest of everything that's in there. You know? Because they recruit cheap. Can't do anything about the statute right now to get progressive experience out of it.
Well, that's fine. I just think we need to have a policy that says that 2-year window starts when you become an LSIT. It's not an overlap, catch-all scenario.
So this would just do it.
Yeah, we're still with it.
We can cross-pollinate with their engineering programs in 3 weeks because they're dealing with the same issue.
Yeah.
Or if we can, they don't want people to start accumulating experience before they've even met any kind of exam requirement.
Right.
You're supposed to, there's stages.
Why should they? Because then,
You never even thought you weren't even in engineering school, but you want to apply the time you were a draftsman.
Right.
yeah.
Way back when, for your 2 years.
Well, that's certainly good that they're working with the same situation. That helps us too.
I think we can wait and talk.
Now, the architecture side of that does not have a 2-step process. You're either are or you're not,
Right.
as far as an architect goes.
You've got to have a year's worth of,
Yeah, right.
or more hours under a licensed architect.
But see, we parallel the engineers greatly because they let their seniors take the FE so that when they come out of school, they step out with their degree and their FE, just like we do with the FS. But they still have to have that window of experience, but I think what you're saying is they want to clarify that. same as we are.
Because people are a little confused about it.
Yeah.
And the general population that are trying to get licensed.
Well, what
They
happens?
think that they're getting their experience and they're not.
Well, what happens is you have a student that doesn't take that exam in that senior semester, final semester, and they go out and work for 4 or 5 years, and then they say, see that they need to have taken that exam to get licensure. So then they take it, and then they want to come back to the very next exam and take the PE or PS, whichever, and there's only 3 or 4 month window between receiving an application, or less.
They only use us 5 years.
Right, they want to use that prior experience, and I think that they're in agreement with us, I bet. So that'd be good.
This is particularly epidemic among civil engineers who figure they're going to work for a private company and don't need a license, or going to work for TDEC, and they don't take it. And the economy gets to the bottom, or skids, or something happens, and they decide they don't.
Well, it's just like the committee housed on the industrial engineers. So many of those are exempt because they go to work in the industry.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they lose their job or change their mind, and now they're out in the world, and they want to go just like that.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it doesn't work that way.
Right. I said they want to.
Been out building bridges for 10 years. And
Right.
I think I like my license.
Right.
Never took the FE.
You know, I told my son's an electrical engineer, and I told him when he got out of school, I said, when you start working, why don't you go ahead and apply to take your beat? I don't know how long it takes to do that. And he said, well, I won't need it working for this company, and I won't need it working for that company. And I said, well, I understand that, but I said, there will come a time that it would be beneficial for you to have that requirement met, have that title, and everything that goes with it. And here he is, he has lost 4 jobs, and he has lost another one down in Knoxville. You think, hey, electrical engineers are dime a dozen down there, there's plenty of work going on. There is not much work. And he is doing contract work. I think he started Monday with a company doing some more contract work, but that's all hinged on money coming in from the government to do work for NASA and what have you, and that's what they're doing. He wants to do that kind of work, and he had interviews with companies, and they started putting him to work, and they redirected funds from the project he was working on to one up in New Jersey. He's back out on the street. And I said, if you had that PE,
Why would you want to get it just to have it, even if you never used it?
well,
Very
you
inexpensive.
know, we had to be a cheerleader all the way through college to get him to finish up, because he was going to change his major and what have you. And he loved electronics and electrical engineering and all that stuff, and so he went on and finished. And I'm glad he did. Thank goodness he did, but still, one more step, and he didn't do it.
We've got board members on the A&E board that their jobs don't require them to have a license.
Yeah.
Because of the industrial exemption. But they have their license, they're on the board.
Yeah.
We just really don't know. I think Philip, our electrical engineer, works for utility.
Yeah, he does.
Al works for Metro.
Right.
I doubt if either one of them ever uses their STEM. But on the other hand, even inside an organization, they don't have to, but they might require you to have a license to get promoted.
They might. And that
Well, they could change at any time.
anytime could be that way. Well, anyway, I'm just saying that I think.
Believe me, this is a speech that the engineers gave in class at whenever they go to university.
Right.
Because they're mostly civil guys. Oh, I'm going to work for, U.S. Department of Transportation or something like that. No, everything. But they're telling them, just like you said, the exact same thing.
I mean, the scenario, how many times has this happened?
Even if you keep your job, like I said, they could tomorrow require a license for that job.
Well, it's just like my son. My son and I talked about licensure, and he said, well, Dad, he said, you're always going to be around here working. He said, that's worked for you. And I said, no, it don't work that way. I said, if Dad dies in a car wreck on the way home from Nashville, I said, you need your license so you can continue. And I said, you know, the firm goes away if I'm not here and I'm the only licensee. And I said, you know, and then you're not licensed, then you're going to have to go be a grunt for somebody else. You know, you're not working for Dad no more. So, you know, work hard and get your license. You know, I mean, that's what he did.
Do you visit universities or colleges that teach surveying?
Gail and I are both on the advisory committee at ETSU, and I'll be going there tomorrow for an advisory committee meeting.
It's this kind of outreach that the board can do once in a while to try to encourage people to get licensed, because A&E board tries to do that too. You know, get your license even if you don't think you're ever going to need it, and present them with those scenarios that from your experience you've actually seen happen before. It's not just a hypothetical.
That's not, I'm telling you, it is not.
It's a crazy economy we live in. And as jobs get more scarce, there's a possibility that companies and governments will make the requirements more strenuous to get those jobs.
Yeah.
To make it more certain they get the people they want when they get flooded.
And I do understand one thing, that my son has 17 years experience. But when he fills out his resume in the computer and he turns this thing in, it doesn't have the right buzzword in there, even though he has all this experience. And there was one company that had interviewed him, and instead of considering 17 years experience, because that's what they wanted, they took a look at his college transcript and said, oh, your grades weren't good enough, and so we're not going to hire you. And he wound up with a, you know, right at a 3.28, 2.9 in engineers. But beside that, you know, it wasn't good enough. And that was the basis, not the experience, because they needed the experience. But this one guy said, no, we're going to look at the college transcript, and they kicked it out.
It's the little things that'll weed you out.
Yeah. So, not only not having a license, but some things in the past will come back to haunt you.
Next time you're talking to a group of students, you know, tell them this kind of thing. Because there are probably a lot of surveying people that think they're going to work for Corps of Engineers, building dams, siting out federal parks, and things like that.
Yeah. I don't know what the status is at the University of Tennessee. I mean, if they're going to pick up this program for surveying and mapping in Knoxville, but, you know, of course, UT Martin is already doing this. I don't know if Tennessee Tech will. We don't seem to be getting quite a fair shake out of East Tennessee State like I would hope that we would. And both of us been on the advisory board up there, and I hadn't planned to go up, but I may drive up anyway, and maybe I can fly up there and talk to John and run up there, we'll set for the meeting, and then turn around and I'll fly back. But what time does that start tomorrow? 10. 10. I think that's good. Get up there in about an hour and 10 minutes. But anyhow, that's just one of those things that to talk to those kids as they're getting ready to go into this program, you better make the most of everything you do.
Especially when we're doing these things like your experience won't count until after you pass the fundamental exam.
Exactly right.
So changing your mind later, although noble, may not help you as much as you think. You got to pass it, and as time goes by, it's tougher and tougher to pass those exams. I'm sure it is.
Oh, it is. I wouldn't want to take this exam again.
I won't take the part again.
I always thought I'm a pretty fair surveyor, but when it comes to taking tests, I'm a world's worst test taker.
Y'all don't go and audit the exam sometimes?
Yeah.
Do it and see how it is?
Well, Tim did take one that I think that Peter had done, didn't he? And, but I haven't taken it, but I the last one he gave us, which was at the spring conference, that was a pretty comprehensive little quiz that he had put up there. And I doubt that I could have gotten through that without at least sitting down and applying myself to do a little bit of, a background study and that kind of thing.
Well, part of the issue is just the time window. You only have a two-hour time window.
Yeah.
And you have so much work to do. You have to not only know how to do the work, but you've got to be able to manage your time to get that amount of work done in that time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But that's atypical. I mean, most all the state-specific exams are designed around that same criteria. They're jam-packed full for 2 hours.
That's part of the test, though. Because in real life, you're going to be crushed for time, too. Right. Pressure is part of the test.
That's it. And when I took the state Pacific, second time I took it, because I took the first time to see what was on it, but I had no idea. I didn't have a clue. Coming in surveying, not knowing, but when I went the second time to take that wrestle, I had put time in and studied. I had worked problems. I had done everything, and I started going through it in an hour and a half or an hour, and I think we had 4 hours to finish the entire part. I was done in an hour, about an hour and 10 minutes. And I went back and checked my work. I thought, have I missed something here? But that second time I had applied myself and I had gotten ready and I knew what to do with each one of those things.
Makes a difference.
And somebody looked at me and I turned my paper in. Thought, well,
You're done, you're done.
I'm done. I said, if it's wrong, then they're going to tell me. And I said, if it's right, then they're going to tell me.
Therefore, you're paying it right.
Did you give me a copy of the legal report from yesterday, Don?
I got notified that I think you actually adopted everything without really changing anything. So.
Okay, I think we've sort of put that little issue to bed. So I think the last thing that we have on our agenda, our new business agenda, is to discuss our continuing education rule changes. We got about 3/4 of the way through that the last time with our draft. And I don't know if y'all have taken time to look over it any further since that point in time.
I actually think we got a really good handle on it.
Yeah, we went a long ways on it, really did.
Looks
But
like we
very,
got-
very productive.
It's like we got down to Rule 10, which is the one right after hardship.
It's correct, yes, sir.
Down to which one?
Rule 10.
Second to last page on your alphabet. Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you emailed me a copy of this draft,
Okay.
but I would like to request that whenever you get a chance, if you can email me this red line,
Oh, the red line draft? Yes, I can.
then I'll put it in the correct form
Okay.
for a notice.
Yeah, I was just trying to help. The young lady at my office does a good job with that stuff. Just trying to help out. I'll make a note here to send that text.
So we did fiddle with it.
I thought I actually had another printed of it, but I could mark on it. I brought mine with me.
Mark on mine, you're welcome to.
You don't have an extra, you don't?
No, I thought you said no.
If you want to mark on the others, and I'll take it back with me or whatever. Signature, so I can get it. I thought I picked that up, but I didn't. I purged last month's, or last time's meeting. Here it is. Let's see. I've got it. I do have it on.
Okay.
I did find it. Okay. Sure did. How about
Yes.
that?
I don't have it on the marker.
Okay. Found it.
What page?
Well, there's no page on it. You don't go
Say it's the last page.
next to
I gotta have it, so.
Oh, that, okay.
Okay.
Put it on the notice.
drink of water, give me a minute.
All right.
Get a drink of water.
We'll break here for a couple minutes. Mr. Northcutt needs a drink. Water.
Yeah. We'll be back in a minute.
Okay, it is now 11:05. We're going to start our final session for this meeting and review the last 2 pages of the continuing education chapter. And we are at section 10, we will call it. It's reports and records. This is a very important section that we get your input on, Donna, as to how you may feel like we may need to change it, modify it so that it will help make your job easier.
Looks like we struck out of the town's application for registration.
I don't remember why we struck that.
I don't either.
But,
I guess because,
It's so they turn in all around the year.
so they don't have to have everything done at the time of registration renewal.
If it wasn't,
We expect them to be done before the time of renewal.
What, you talking about that first phrase?
yes.
So we
Oh,
struck
it just wasn't needed, was it? Because I think we struck it out and said, reports and records, each registrant shall report a form on the form provided, whatever. But when are they going to do it? At the time of registration?
yeah.
So,
We're thinking too much, so.
huh?
We're thinking too much, so
Maybe
that makes
so.
sense. You gotta have it all in at the time of renewal.
That's it.
Meet all requirements.
I think the reason that we did that is because that, technically speaking, we're really required to do it annually. Is that not correct, Donna? And renewal is biannual. And I think that's why we've struck that particular
And that may be
section.
the case, but we just decided that was not needed
Right.
for getting the reports and records in. And all we need was just to make sure that the registrant shall report on the form provided what was required.
Could we say something, maybe each registrant shall report at the end of each calendar year on a form provided by the board the continuing education activities undertaken during the preceding year? Because that's really what we're doing, right, Donna?
See, when continuing education went into effect in 1994, we were on a yearly renewal. Then when they changed the yearly renewal to 2-year renewal, they didn't change the continuing education to match up with the renewal.
Right. They did.
So they had to pay their money every odd year. They still have to do CE every year.
Right.
So if we want to get them to match up, we want to change this, the rule, continuing education to say.
But I think, Tim, I'm going to say I disagree with you.
That's
with
fine.
that without putting any extra words in here. Listen to what it says. It says, each registrant shall report on a form provided by the board the continuing education activities undertaken during the preceding year.
Well, I guess the consideration should be that, do we want them to actually report the activities annually, or do we want them biannually?
Well, I think you're going to, with this change that we're looking at making as far as registration, whether we do it by even and odd numbers on the licensure, or if we do it by birthdays, or we do it alphabetically, whatever it may be, to even out the flow of revenue coming in, I think that the registrant's going to have to report every year.
Okay.
I don't see any way around it. I mean, if you hadn't reported every 2 years when they renew their license, we are allowing, I guess, the carryover of so many credit hours each year. And I personally think probably, I don't see we're going to get away from reporting every year unless you Don, I think that it would be more beneficial to do it otherwise. So,
Every year's fine with me. It's just whatever, whatever we do for surveyors.
and I think they're gonna take the courses anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, Tim and I, we take extra courses,
Yeah.
and if I find something that I think's interesting, whether I've already had the number that I need or not, I still want to go and take this thing, and I'm gonna report it at the end of the year. If I wait 2 years to do this thing, that just means I just take a longer time to fill this thing out. But every year I get a form, I ship it back in. I don't see that's not increasing your workload over what you're currently doing.
Yeah.
If it increased your workload, then I'd say we better take another look at this.
Because I've been doing it every year since 1995, so.
And we're the only state that I know of that does 100% audit.
Yeah, that's right. In fact, that may come up when we talk NCAAS here, and these will continue ahead.
Yeah.
But anyway,
But every year's fine with me.
if it's fine with you, then I'll just assume
I just send it like it is because,
that, yeah,
Okay, so we're going to strike out the first 5 or 6 words,
the first phrase there.
first phrase, and then
Just
go
pick
from
up
there.
Each registered shall.
Okay.
For the preceding year.
All right. Paragraph 2 says the registrant shall maintain a file in which records of the activities are kept, including dates, subjects, duration of programs, printed program schedules, registration receipts, or other proof of participation, and other appropriate documentation for a period of 3 years after the date of the program or activity. Any problem with that?
No?
That's for auditing.
I think I've got mine ever since the thing
I
gets
do too,
started.
yeah.
That's a file that's getting thick, I'm gonna stomp on it, but.
Okay. All right, let's go on now to section 11, which is sponsors. And it says, any sponsor that offers an organized continuing education program for which credit for the program will be requested shall keep a record or
That's a typo.
I think that should be
Oh, I think
should be
should be obvious.
of attendees at each session, and shall furnish the board a copy of the attendees within 30 days of the conclusion of the program. Do our vendors do that? Okay. So it looks like the only correction we have there is changing it, an or to an of. I will look in here and see maybe for any reason that's just a pure typo.
Now, let's see.
Okay, it is a typo. I'll just get that corrected, and actually we can delete that one because we're not going to make any change. You're correct, Rob?
Same.
Or do we leave it in the main document?
Well, the typo is in a rule that we're not going to touch.
Right, but it is a typo because I'm looking at the rule.
Well, I mean, that'll be a change that we need to make.
no.
No.
it's
This
a typo.
it's my typo. It's my typo. I made the typo.
In the rules, it's not.
The rules is okay.
Oh,
So we would
yeah.
delete that paragraph.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, this isn't a notice form, this is actually the rules. I'm going to take your draft there and put it on a notice form.
Okay, well, let's just leave it like it is for the time being, and then we'll clean it up next time like we did the rules of conduct.
Yeah,
Okay?
you email it to me and I'll put it on the right.
Okay, I'll get that fixed. Okay, moving along, we've got 4 more. Paragraph 12, approval of programs. Number 1, approval of any program may be granted to a sponsoring organization or individual if the following information is submitted to the board. Instructions and their qualifications, and B, synopsis of course material. program itself. All of this is actually for the applicant. Remember seeing anything on this thing in particular. Do you feel like that's adequate, Donna? Anybody want to add anything to that? I do not see anything in there on that. And basically, you have a form right now that goes to the vendor or sponsor that they fill out, and then what you do basically is once you receive that form, you forward that on in background
No, I make them
information.
send each advisory committee member
Okay.
and me a copy.
Okay, we'll talk about the advisory committee in a minute, so, okay, now, number 2, paragraph number 2 says, the board will approve or disapprove the request within 90 days of the date the request is submitted to the board. If the board fails to act upon the request within 90 days, the program will be considered approved as submitted. Now, we've had some issues with this, right, Donna? My concern with it is, to my knowledge, since I've been on this board, we have never been asked to approve anything. Now, that's not a grave concern to me. I don't necessarily have to approve every individual course. That's why we have the advisory committee. But I somewhat think that we need to reword this a little bit to say maybe at the board's direction or the executive director's privilege or something. We got to say something, because the procedure we're using right now, if I understand it right, is somebody notifies you they want to have a course, and you tell them that they got to fill out these papers.
Yeah, they fill out the papers to me, a copy to me, and a copy to each one of the advisory committee.
Okay, which is
And when I get the recommendations back, whenever I get the recommendations back from the advisory committee, if they're all the same, I'll let them know. If there's 2 for and 1 against, I'll let them know. If there's 2 against and 1 for, then that's one right here. I haven't had those in a while.
okay.
If I don't get any response, then within 90 days,
It's approved.
and I don't particularly.
I don't like
It could be
that.
a course. It could be a course for basket weekend.
Right.
And that's not survey related.
Yeah, I don't like the automatic approval of this.
It should either be a longer, like 6 months, or the board has to look at it, or take the time period out, and if no response is received from either any of the advisory committees within so many days or whatever, then the board has to, or something. I don't know what we do, but
The board will approve or disapprove the request at its next scheduled meeting.
I personally think that all courses must receive board approval, whether it be by the advisory board or the board of examiners itself. I don't think that any course ought to be offered that does not have approval of the board.
so y'all want to see all of Virginia's.
I mean,
No,
the
I
advisory
don't.
committee is doing the approval for us in this case.
Yeah.
But I think what Galen's saying is, I think he wants to eliminate this 90-day automatic thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
want to
don't like it.
eliminate that. That's exactly what I want to eliminate. I don't think any course, regardless of what it is, whether it's basket weaving or what have you, if it comes in here just because we don't give notice about this thing within 90 days, if it hasn't been received, if they haven't received some kind of notification, personally, I would think that if it's not received within 90 days, it is not approved,
That's right.
rather than be approved.
And then after 90 days, y'all should review.
And if it's 90 days and the vendor is saying, well, you guys didn't didn't approve this, and it's been 90 days. I said, well, you're right, it has been. And, you know, it fell through the cracks on our part, the advisory board didn't do it, what have you. But you still don't have the authority to present this until we see what's being done. And so I would say that if approval is not given in 90 days, then it's a no-go for them.
Right.
Well, for the sake of being redundant, could we move basically the sentence that's under the advisory committee up to that paragraph? Because that's really how we're acting. The board appoints an advisory committee to assist in evaluating these programs and determine the credit. But basically what we're doing is we're giving the advisory committee the authority in lieu of this board to approve them. This board can still approve them, but we're basically transferring that authority to the advisory committee so that we don't have to deal with 42 different continuing education
That's
programs.
exactly right. And they shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah, you can move it up to number 1 or number 4. Delete Rule 15.
I'd actually like to delete, well, do we want to delete all of number 2?
No, just second sentence.
No, I don't think so.
Can we just strike then, the board, and just say the board will approve or disapprove the request that is submitted to the board? Or just leave, will approve or disapprove the request, period?
Why don't you change the second sentence to, no provider may present any material that's not approved by the board, or something to that effect.
That sounds outstanding.
Delete that
It
second,
makes it terribly simple.
delete the second sentence and say,
Say what now?
The automatically renewed, approved board.
no, what do you call them, sponsors? No sponsor may present any continuing education course without first obtaining the approval of the board.
And the board meaning the advisory board and/or the board itself.
Whoever the board authorizes to approve, it's got to have an approval.
Let's say that the advisory board says, hey, we're having a hard time with this because we think what have you, and they turn it back over to the 4 members of us, and whatever it may be. The board is inclusive of the advisory board and us, and/or us, because we have the final authority and responsibility for what is being taught to the.
You're actually the Court of Appeals. You're the appellate level
That,
over if they have a
right
problem.
there is exactly right.
So you want to say what now, Rod? Say again what you want to say.
No sponsor may present any continuing education courses without,
Board approval.
can you say board approval without first obtaining approval of the board?
Okay.
Depends on how you want to wordsmith it, but that's basically take out the automatic approval and replace it with the reciprocal. Thou shalt not present a course without getting approval.
Now, if we want to leave a 90-day thing in there, what that says is, okay, board, you better get on the stick and get this done in 90 days.
Yeah, that's making you responsible.
But regardless of that, if we haven't done it, you're not going to present it until,
You're not authorized.
for
yet.
whatever reason, we may have a reason that we haven't been able to get to and do this thing. If they have a question about it, they can call us.
Right.
And then, when they call us and say, okay, well, it is on the agenda or it is not for review, and we're going to take another 30 days or 15 or whatever it may be, but you don't present anything until.
I say I don't want to put a window there because, for example, we meet in April, generally the first, second week of April, but we don't meet again till August. So we have a greater time period than 90 days. For example,
Well,
if we met and on Monday after we met in April, she gets this request in, well then we got a long stretch till August. That's the only thing I was worried about the timing.
Well,
Let's
that's
say-
okay, but it's not us that's doing that. Right now, it's the advisory guys that are doing the approval. And if they haven't approved it within 90 days, I'm just saying that they have to get on the stick. If they don't,
Yeah, and then it comes to y'all.
then it would come to us. And what we do
They have 90
is,
days.
if the advisory board has not given approval within 90 days, let's say
Well, we
there's
need to
some
put
reason they
that,
didn't want to.
if we make this advisory committee sentence down here, number 4, then we need to put in with it that the advisory committee shall have 90 days to approve or disapprove, or it will be forwarded to the board for review. Is that fair? Is that where you're going, Dale?
Well,
That's just to keep it from sitting somewhere
Yeah,
without any
right.
activity.
that's the intent, to keep it from sitting for somewhere, whether it comes to us or not. The advisory board still may review it and give approval to it. Tim, I wouldn't want to put something that forwards it back to us unless the advisory board thinks it ought to come to us for review.
Okay, so you don't want a fail safe to come back to us.
I don't.
If they drag their feet and don't get it in 90 days, we would see it so that we could process it.
I mean, that's okay if we would do that, but I think that we've hired them to do that work. Let them do their work.
That's
If there's a reason
volunteer
why.
committee.
Yeah, it's a volunteer committee,
Yeah.
you see. But if they have not done that in 90 days, there may be a reason. And maybe
Okay.
they should come to us and say, hey, we're having
Okay.
difficulty. And then the rest of us will look at it and say the same thing maybe that they're saying. It's, if the judge rules in 90 days that they have real question about this, then the board takes the last look at it and probably will say just the same thing as they do. It's probably out rather than in.
Okay, well, let's just,
You're smirking there.
I was trying to think about whether we should make the advisory committee shall report to the board within 90 days of status involved in submitted courses. But then you get involved with it.
Yeah,
It's
you
almost
do.
like doing something twice.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the whole point.
But just to make sure something happens within 90 days.
Right now, we haven't had a problem with the advisory committee at all.
right.
They're doing a great job with this, at least as far as I know they are. Donna's the one that knows whether the approval's being given in a timely manner and what have you. And I really wouldn't want to upset that apple cart. I'd rather they just keep on, because I don't think that as a board we need to put our fingers on everything down there. I think we get to the point where we're micromanaging it, and I'd rather us not do that. We got a good bunch of guys that are doing this thing. I just think that if it's not approved in 90 days, then hey, if you want to follow up, fine, but we're not going to make it an automatic approval.
Okay, all right.
Well,
So,
we could take out approval of the board, just say, no sponsor shall present any continuing education materials without approval.
That's it.
without approval,
That means that it's either through the committee or through the board.
Either
It's gotta be
okay. All right, we'll strike,
Say prior approval.
Prior approval. Yeah, I guess you can say that.
okay. All right, we're going to strike paragraph 2, and we're going to state, no sponsor may present any continuing education course without prior approval, period.
Yeah.
Okay,
And do we call it a sponsor or a vendor?
sponsor,
Sponsor.
Okay.
sponsors.
I was trying to keep the.
And then, paragraph 3, I think we can leave it the same. I don't think we have an issue with it. After they have given the course, they're to submit to Donna the role of attendees and where it was held and so forth. I think that one's fine.
Yep.
Okay, let's move to section 13, audits. I think we need to do a little wording on this one. It says the board may conduct random audits of continuing education activities and registrants' participation therein. Should sufficient deficiencies be discovered, registrants will be notified and have 6 months to satisfy the deficiency, except where such audits reveal fraudulent misrepresentations to have been made by a registrant. The first thing is we don't conduct random audits.
Well, this doesn't say you have to, because it says may.
Okay.
It just gives you the discretion to.
Okay, well, the second thing is, I have a little bit of an issue with the 6 months to catch up, because under our law, the continuing education is that, and the fee is what keeps you licensed. So technically, you're deficient, and you're not licensed.
You haven't met all minimum requirements.
Right. So I have a little bit of a problem with the 6 months. For example,
What should it be? Should it be annual?
no, I think it's left up to the registrant. And the reason I say that is, for example, if on December 31st of 2011, I did not submit continuing education, but I submitted my fee, so I was deficient by 15 hours. Okay. By our rules, I'm not licensed, so I've got to do whatever I need to do to get my 15 hours to get them turned into the board. Well, I may not be able to get a course till the end of February, so I may be unlicensed for 2 months.
That's a real possibility.
You know, or I might be able to go the next week again. You know.
And the law says they have a year to renew anyway.
Right, and see, that's another part of the law. We're going to have to
Yeah.
fight that battle on the renewal on it. But I think that I think we need to eliminate the 6 months. I just think it should say, should deficiency be discovered, registrants will be notified. Period.
Well, it is a grace period. The Attorney General says we can do this because these rules went through them like they do, like all rules do. I guess because
But what I'm saying is, it opens another window of question as to whether or not a registrant is licensed or not. And that's what I was trying to close those windows of vagueness.
if you're a one-man shop or something, it's pretty tough to catch up almost immediately, I would think. I think that's probably why that's.
It would be difficult, and I'm a one-man shop. And if I were deficient, finding a course within a week's time or within a month's time would be very difficult.
It's true, if you don't meet minimum requirements, your license slips into the invalid status.
Yeah.
You still have it, but it's not valid because you haven't met requirements.
Yeah.
This rule, I'm sure, was just us throwing somebody, saying,
What the Attorney General has said, if we need to have some kind of a grace period or this 6-month thing in here, I don't know how it got in there.
well, they just said we can do that.
Yeah, okay.
That it's legal for us to suspend the minimum requirements and give them a chance to catch up
Okay.
without consequences in there so they don't draw discipline for it.
Okay, yeah.
If they catch up in the 6 months and it goes outside that, then they get a complaint. I would think, you got 6 months or you're going to get discipline. I'm just trying to read, because this is what happens.
Well, I'll go back to Tim. I almost feel like Tim. I'd like to close this window, but do we have to give it 6 months? Could we give it 90 days? Would 90 days be more, Tim, would that be a little bit better than run 180 days? That cuts it in half. Does that give the registrant time to get caught up?
A different from where you went with the PDH courses, you can certainly get on the internet instantaneously and be taking courses.
You could do that.
You certainly can.
The only thing is, has the guy taken more than half of his courses on the internet prior to being deficient? If he has already taken 1/2 of his courses, video or otherwise, and he's still deficient, then he said, oh, I can get on the internet and finish it up here in 3 days. I said, well, too bad there, Sam. You've already taken 1/2 of your courses, and you have to go someplace to get this.
Yeah, you've done your sitting in your seat stuff.
That's it.
Well, the AG, basically, the takeaway is that they believe that we can legally give them a chance to catch up. It doesn't have to be 6 months. You can shrink it to ever how long you want it to be. if you want to give them a chance to catch up, because you're the professional and sort of.
Well, see,
defer to you.
our law already, in a roundabout way, gives them a year as it is. If you don't pay your fee by January the 1st, you have a year to pay your fee to keep from losing your license. Now, it's late and you are not licensed, but you still got a year to make that up. So we've got a year on the money side, and we've got 6 months on the continued ed side, which that's the two components it takes to maintain your license.
Both are necessary.
Yeah.
Well, we do 100% on it, so we catch people in the fishing.
Oh, yeah, she catches them all the time.
And I catch some that turn in stuff that's not good for you, some they took
Right.
2 years ago, and
So, as surveyors, what's it like out there? I mean, is every minute of the day accounted for and it's tough enough to get these courses in?
No.
Because if it's not that tough, then they don't need, I have to have 15 hours a year. So.
You're always going to have your group of surveyors that procrastinate, just like in any profession.
They would rather work and make money than go spend money. and
Well,
go
no,
to
they
class.
just procrastinate because they just don't feel like to go have the seat time.
But you have to have 15. We have to have 15.
Engineers, I think it's 16 every 2 years.
Yes. Oh, every 2 years. Ours,
There's a
every year.
mine, I have to have mine for accountancy.
Well, do you want to just hold this one for discussion, further discussion?
Yeah, we don't have to make a decision.
We were right, yeah. We're just trying to craft this thing, and then we're going to go back through it again.
We're going to put it in its proper.
Yeah, right.
We're just trying
Well,
to get it
well,
right.
I'll give me and you time to think more about
Sure.
this too, and I think I ought to include David on this.
Yeah, well,
Sue
David-
already has her opinions too, so.
He's learning it quick, isn't he?
Dave's got a lot of catching up to do this week.
Yeah, it's gonna have that, but anyway,
Okay.
maybe we ought to just put this, table this one until we get, ready for the next
It's
one.
fine with me,
Okay,
'cause it's
that's
not like
fine.
we don't have other rules we're working on.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. We're working on 2 or 3 things. You're ready to start something else, so that's fine.
Lots of balls in the air.
All right, let's move on to paragraph 14. We'll go here for about another 10 minutes or so, and then we'll cut out of here. Comedy, paragraph 14. The board shall deem a registrant to have met the continuing education requirements provided herein if such registrant, when making annual renewal of Tennessee registration, certifies in writing the following. The registrant resides in another state or territory which has been recognized by the Tennessee Board as having continuing education requirements acceptable to the Tennessee Board. B, the registrant has satisfied all continuing education and registration requirements of that state or territory. Now, first paragraph, do we want to maintain the words annual renewal?
But if they don't renew every year,
right, but what if,
But the continuing education is presented annual.
and that's the subject of this chapter.
Right.
I don't
So
think
I'm just wondering if we should say when making,
It's misleading renewal.
right, annual submission or
Yes.
something.
Submission of continuing education
Right.
credits. Renewal is misleading. That looks like
Renewal
Your
says,
license.
hey, that's licensure.
Right.
This is required for renewal, but this is not renewal.
Yeah, that's not what we're talking about in this chapter.
That's it. We're talking about
let's
continued ed
check.
here, not licensure.
When making annual submission of continuing education for Tennessee registration, certifies the following writing.
Or toward renewal,
Or continuing education toward,
yeah, toward renewal, because that's what they're doing, isn't it? Toward renewal of Tennessee registration. Just something to make it
okay, that's fine.
say that, we're not talking about the actual renewal.
and they have to meet our requirements, correct? Like if their state
That's the
requires
next,
12 hours?
that's the next topic.
They gotta get 15.
Right.
But the law currently says, under B, shall satisfy all continuing education registration requirements for that state or territory. So what that says to me is we need to accept whatever they do. For example, let's use Kentucky as an example. Kentucky requires 8 hours a year. Okay? The way I read this, and correct me if I'm wrong, the way I read this, if they meet Kentucky's, we accept it.
That's what I'm seeing.
Okay? But that's not been the spirit that we've had recently on the board. The spirit's been, if we have to have 15, they got to have 15. So if you're in Kentucky and you got 8, you got to get 7 more Tennessee.
If you're gonna work in this state, you gotta meet our state's minimum.
Right. That's kind of the spirit that we've been having, but our law here, our rule here does not say that. And that's the football we want to try to figure out if we want to kick around.
Well, I'm going to say this, that if we're playing by the book when it comes to the 10-year rule, if we're playing by the book by anything else, if we want it to say to be licensed in Tennessee, do as Tennesseans do, then let's put it in here to that effect.
Right, correct.
In other words, you may have 8 hours in Kentucky, but we want you to have 7 more in Tennessee. Let's do it.
There's also sort of another constitutional issue with that, which we would be treating citizens of different states unequally,
Yeah.
which violates the privileges and immunities clause of the Constitution. We have to treat everybody the same. We can't prefer our people or somebody else's over another jurisdiction.
Yeah, let's say that this Mississippi, let's just say, I don't know anything about Mississippi, let's say they only require 12 hours. Kentucky requires 8. I accept each one, but
See, we'd have
they are
people-
not equal.
We'd have people running around with a Tennessee license and obtained it differently. Some didn't have to have the hours another one had to have. And that's not equal.
I just,
That's not fair.
I just think that.
And see, the only person that pays the piper in this, the way this is written, is if you are a licensee in a state that has no continuing education, and there's, I think, 20 states that don't have continuing education, I think. Well, maybe I'm telling you wrong. I've got it right here. There's several states that don't have it. I can tell you here in just a minute. Here we go. But they all have different criteria.
Even if they got in reciprocity and want to renew it, you have to take it.
Okay, you see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm sorry, there's 9. There used to be 20 a few years back. There's 9 states currently that do not require any continuing education.
Like I said, even if they got into Tennessee under reciprocity to renew,
Those states
they
would
would have to take.
those states would have to match ours because they have no continuing education, and that's what the law says. Or the rule says.
I just think that we ought to, that they ought to match whatever. If Tennessee requires 15 hours, whether they're licensed in Kentucky, if they got 8 hours in Kentucky, fine. Get 7 hours somewhere else.
Well, here's the thing that they need to make perfectly clear in their head. If they come here from a state that does not require CEs, they may get in here under reciprocity because they took the exam, they have a degree. But when it comes time to renew
They're going to have continued.
in Tennessee, even if they don't have
If
to
you
at home.
continue to practice in Tennessee.
Correct.
You may
Well, I
have
don't
that,
have to at home. It's-
you may have that first year free.
You may get the first year free.
Thereafter, you're going to have continue ed to continue to practice in
That
Tennessee.
has to be made crystalline to these people because they'll scream whenever renewal rolls around. But I got my license here.
Well, when you look, I looked at the 8 states that touch Tennessee. Alabama requires the same thing, we do 15. Arkansas requires the same thing, we do 15. Georgia requires 7.5 per year. Kentucky is 8 per year. Mississippi is 12 per year.
So it was 12.
North Carolina, you did good there. North Carolina is 15 per year.
Okay.
South Carolina is 15 per year. Tennessee's 15 per year, and Virginia is 16 or 8 hours, it's 16 for 2 years, so Virginia's 8 hours. So we only have 3 adjoining states that are right against, there's 8 states that touch Tennessee, and out of the 8, there's 3 states
What about Missouri?
that have left. Did I not give them? I'm sorry. Missouri has 10 hours. There's 4 states.
Okay, there's a lot of people that would have to take some classes.
Right.
Even if they came in under reciprocity, to keep their Tennessee license, they have to take 15 hours. It's the way it's gotta be. I can't prefer other people from other states over our own.
Yeah, I just,
So-
and I
so-
think that that's the right thing to do. I mean, that's just in my opinion. I just think that
It protects the public.
when in Rome, do as Romans do. When you're in Tennessee, if you're licensed in Tennessee, do as Tennesseans do. Let's match our education requirements, and then you can continue to practice here.
Well, a citizen that obtains the services of a surveyor needs to be assured that they all have the same, they've all met the same requirements.
That's
Right.
exactly right.
I mean, that's,
I'm not being hard-nosed, I just think that's the way it ought to be.
That's what we do here.
yeah. I mean, it just makes it simple for Donna. She doesn't have to say, well, this person's from Missouri, and do they have that to meet theirs, and, you know, you got 15.
That's no matter what.
And is that what we're saying, everybody has to have 15? Or whatever the magic number of hours we decide
Whatever
for
it
this
is.
rule,
Yeah.
whatever that is, that's what everybody has to have.
Right.
Okay.
We can even be clear about it, you know. Registrants who obtain their Tennessee license through reciprocity must maintain the required continuing education.
For Tennessee
something like
required
that.
education.
Yeah.
I like that.
We're gonna get some comments on that,
We may.
but they're on.
Just tell them that I said so.
Yeah.
So what we're
That's
gonna
what I
say
do
is,
anyway.
in paragraph A, we're gonna say the registrant resides in another state or territory which has been recognized by the Tennessee Board shall satisfy all continuing education requirements for new in Tennessee. And then we'll strike B. We'll strike B. And like I say, again, we're going to print this up, we're going to look at it again, and we'll have time to think about it.
Yeah.
What I'll do is when I get this draft up to send it to Rob, I'll send it to Donna and y'all too, so y'all have it.
Eventually, that'll draft to get circulated around tabs.
Right. Because we still got to fill in some blanks. We've not decided on the hours, and we need to address the current policy that we've given the advisory board. It needs to be addressed in here too about the relationship of seat time and internet hours and that type of thing. We've got to address that. So we've got one more item and we'll conclude. Advisory committee,
They have moved.
are we going to move that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're going to move that one to number 4 up
Yeah,
here.
they got sort of bundled into.
Okay, that's fine. So we actually strike out 15 and that'll get struck.
And it goes to number 4.
Goes to number 4, up under paragraph 12.
Approval of programs.
That's fine. That's correct.
It can either be number 1 or number 4. I think it's approved.
Yeah, it doesn't matter whether it's that or, anyway.
Okay, so what I'll do is when I get back, I'll have my young lady type this up and get a copy of everybody over the internet to everybody, over the email. Then that way y'all have time from now in October to begin looking it over and thinking about it, filling in the rest of the blanks. If anybody needs any information about hours in other states or whatever, just holler at me and I'll get you a copy of that. Just so that you kind of know what they have, don't have. Okay, does anyone else have any other business? I want to thank everybody for your attendance and your attention. hope everyone has a safe trip home. And until we see everybody again, which will be in October. Some of us will see you a little sooner at the end of the month in St. Louis. So, but Donna, thank you as always for all that you do for us, and we appreciate your work. And this concludes the meeting, and we have a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
And a second? All right, we are now adjourned. Turn it off. Figure out how to do it. Keep pushing buttons. I'll figure out how to do it.